Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian and his ever-trusty sidekick.
Hello.
He's not entirely awake today, so you have to just sort of bear with him. Today we have the most awesome box I've ever received from the wonderful guys at Warlord Games, who are awesome, by the way. A bolt-action box of Continuation War Finnish Rifle Squad. I've been after Finns for ages and I've finally got around to getting some. Of course, we've got the Russians already, so now we're moving on to the Finns. And we'll pop the box open. You can use them for pretty much the entire war. I'll do what I did last time. We're actually getting a little bit more organised nowadays.
Wow, that's a change.
Yeah, we tend to just sort of bumble into these things.
Yeah, nearly 2 years in.
Yeah, supposed to take things professionally, but I'm not professional.
Yeah, professional? What's that?
Yeah, no, professionals for wimps.
Yeah.
Right, we have a normal rifleman. There's 9 figures in the box in total, so that's just heads up. You can see the figures on the back there. I should have done that with the Kriegsmarine box. You have a guy kneeling firing with a kepi on. And then you have one of those really rubbish Finnish machine guns. Then you have that appears to be he's a guy throwing a Molotov cocktail. And him. The term Molotov cocktail actually comes from the Finnish War.
Meaning?
Well, Molotov was bombing Helsinki. And he was carpet bombing the city. And the Finns said, the Russians are carpet bombing the city, help. And they went to the League of Nations and said, dude, we've been bombed. And Molotov said, no, we're not. But the foreign minister of Russia was called Molotov. And Molotov said, no, we're not bombing the Finns, we're dropping food parcels. And so the Finns, when they threw Molotov cocktails at Russian soldiers to set them on fire in the Russian tanks, they said, we're not using weapons banned by the Convention of Flamethrowers. We're actually wine for the food parcels. We're giving the Russians Molotov cocktails, which is wine for the food parcels that the Russians are dropping on us. Because both bombing cities was illegal by international law, and so Molotov cocktails were illegal, and you weren't allowed to set people on fire. So that was.
We both broke the law.
Yeah, they both broke the law. Who cares? It's war. We'll just zoom in. That's the chaps, right? So we have a submachine gun, a guy throwing a Molotov cocktail, a MP40, not an MP40, Russian submachine gun, PPSH.
Yay!
It actually might be a Tokarev.
No, it's PPSH because I'm paying. I can find it. There it is.
Yeah, it just looked like a piece of PPSH now. Another guy with a Sten. Is that a Sten? I don't know what that is. I suppose it's supposed to be some form of PPSH because it's got that gun. Could be a Thompson. It doesn't appear big enough. No.
It's a.
That appears to be rather unpleasant modelling, to be honest.
Alahate Salmoranata.
That's that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That is that's a standard rifle, and then we get the helmets. The helmets are quite German World War I helmets. Actually, by the war continuation, the Finns would appear to have been using German issue helmets. Also, the Russians, believe it or not, use German helmets. Quite a few regiments, divisions in fact, in the Russian army were actually equipped with German helmets, not Russian helmets. The opening part of the war, and they left a lot of their kit behind and the Finns stole it. And so they were actually German helmets made in Russia, which is just life is way more complicated than it appears. And they're the heads. We have mostly wearing forage cap and kepi. So we've got those with forage cap and kepi and those with the German style helmet. We will end up with one spare, which I will be able to use for something else. So that is the squad. You're going to be able to mix in figures from the I would assume the Blitzkrieg box would be one of the best to use if you're going to use them as Finns. So if you want to add a few figures into your Finnish army, then the German Blitzkrieg box would be the best one to use. But that's entirely up to you what you do with your Finnish army. We already have a Polish army, which you've already seen, and we've already got a Japanese army to fight against the Russians, and the Finns now give us a new front in the war.
Finns versus Russians.
Yeah. Originally, before officially the Second World War started, Russia tried to annex Finland. They invaded Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bessarabia, part of Hungary, and Poland, of course. And the next one on the list was Finland, and so Russia invaded Finland, and the Finns, with 25,000 men, kicked the Russians' backside. I mean, absolutely bet them. The Russians were... It was a matter of a very, very large military machine attacking along an entire front, fighting against a very small military machine, very well motivated, who knew the terrain very well. The Finns used skis, the Russians didn't. Because as soon as it got cold, the Russians burnt their skis.
Yeah.
So the Finns didn't burn their skis and were able to simply outmaneuver the Russians. Eventually the Russian army got caught up in different motties. A motti is a circular defensive formation, and the Finns took each motti out one by one, slowly wiping them out. One motti, two mottis actually destroyed a middle motti because the Finns went in between the three mottis, fired some machine guns at the other mottis, and then pulled back. And then the mottis on each side slaughtered the Russians in the middle. So the Russians killed their own troops, basically. Quite an interesting war. When that was over, eventually Finland sued for peace, and Finland got pretty decent terms. And then when Germany invaded Russia, the Germans kept pushing the Finns to invade Russia too. And the Finns kept saying, no, we don't want to carry on this war. So eventually the Russians attacked the Finns, forcing the Finns to attack the Russians. Interestingly enough, Finland was the only German, or should we say Nazi, allied country not to be defeated in the Second World War. Finland actually came to terms.
That's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah. The closest to that you can get would be Bulgaria. Was it Romania? It might have been Romania, which that changed sides, which didn't help them. The Russians still executed them all after the war, but so they sort of changed sides and tried to fight the Germans. There was the coup in Hungary which tried to do the same. But Finland actually fought all the way through the war, and when the war was near its end, Finland didn't surrender. They came to terms. They signed a peace treaty with Russia. And part of the peace treaty, part of the argument for the peace treaty was that Finland had not pressed Russia too hard. Finland mainly defended its own territory, and although they did invade Russian territory, they didn't put too much pressure on the Russians, and so the Russians sort of saw that as being quite more useful to the Russians, and so the Russians...
If you think about it, if they did put pressure on the Russians, it hit them out of World War II.
The only way the Finns could really have helped the Second World War would have been... I mean, they didn't have enough troops or forces to...
Oh, still they did, because they took out 2 entire Russian armies.
Yes, but they were part of the Leningrad siege, but they didn't have enough troops to actually take Leningrad. Leningrad could have changed the course of the war, and if they'd have taken Murmansk, that would have changed the course of the war, because it would have meant the Russians would have had their only one water port cut off. They would have had no seaports left that they could use, and then there would be no way of getting American and British supplies to the Russians. So no trucks, no movement, no Russian juggernaut, no Soviet juggernaut.
And then they would have been immobilised.
Yes, and the Russian advance wouldn't have been very quick, and it would have enabled the biggest benefit that the Allies did for the Russians was give them trucks, which manoeuvred fuel to the front line to keep the tanks running, and also move troops. Without the trucks, Russia wouldn't have been able to do the huge push it did, and Russia would have sort of advanced and then stopped, and then advanced and then stopped, and that would have given the Germans the additional time they needed to turn the course of the war, with all the new technologies they were building, fighter jets and stuff.
Because in the end, Russia was the only one really posing a huge threat.
Yeah. Russia was Germany's biggest enemy.
Britain and America were already slowed down from D-Day.
It's just that the British and Americans just didn't have the kit, they didn't have the technology to properly take on a fully equipped German army. Luckily for the Allies, the German army wasn't fully equipped and didn't have the fuel. So, and the reason they didn't have the fuel is because the Russians took the oil fields, which meant the Germans had no fuel. So that's what killed the Germans in the end. Had the Germans been able to slow the Russians down enough without the trucks, then they could have changed the course of the war. Germany would have been able to sue for peace.
Yep.
I mean, technically, I think America would have accepted a peace treaty, given the state of the American army at the end of the war.
Because of Japan.
And Japan as well. It would have. I suppose the Americans could have held on until they had the nuclear bomb. But had the Americans used a nuclear bomb against Germany, there would be no one alive in England today, because the Germans would have used X-gas against Britain. Or V-gas.
Why else?
Part of there's an agreement that you don't use gas and weapons like that, right?
Oh, America have broken that.
Yes, America broke that rule.
And the closest country to retaliate to is Britain.
Yeah. Germany had massive amounts of X-gas, X-gas, the gas before VX.
We know, and we left all ours at Dunkirk.
Yes, which was absolutely lethal. And they had bombers stationed all throughout Norway, loaded up with X-gas. And had the British at any point used gas against the Germans, the retaliation of the Germans would have been to bomb every single British city with X-gas. And given that Britain didn't have air raid shelters with pressurised air raid shelters, and all we used was gas masks, gas mask goes through your skin, so the gas mask won't help you. It would have killed millions, because Britain is a very densely populated country. Most people live in the cities.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have killed millions, especially in cities like Sheffield, which is in a basin.
Britain would have gone against America.
Britain wouldn't have been in a stage to carry on the war if it hadn't surrendered. Or at least signed it.
No, Churchill was in charge, I don't think so.
And Churchill would have been removed. Britain wouldn't have survived to move like that. Neither would Germany, because of course we couldn't gas Germany because we didn't have any gas, because we left it all on the beaches.
The thing is, nuclear bombs are really ineffective. You take out one town, one city.
Yeah.
And then you can't go to that city for another 10 or a decade or 20 years.
Oh, they did to Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Because of radiation.
Yeah, but they did go to Nagasaki.
They didn't know about radiation.
No, they didn't. And they got ill.
And they wondered why they got ill.
Yeah. But if you would have nuked a German city, say Berlin, then the automatic military response would be to do that. It's just like nowadays, if a nuclear bomb detonates in London now, it would make Britain a better place. But if a nuclear bomb went off in London now, and the military, and the government was killed, the military have orders already. The submarines out at sea have orders. We only have submarines these days. We can't afford bombers. Those submarines would go to a launch point and then open their secret orders, which the Prime Minister gives them, which is basically nuke Moscow or whatever the orders are. And then our submarines would launch. And then you would have World War III.
So they have secret... So every general has a secret order from the Prime Minister?
Yeah, all armies do. There's automatic responses.
That's scary.
Yeah. That's saying that Russia's the one that nukes us. It could be anyone these days. Maybe it's the French. Maybe they decide to take us out in retaliation for Brexit. Then you'd have to retaliate against France.
Yeah, and then America had to retaliate against Russia.
Well, the thing is, there's no point nuking France because there's nowhere worth bombing. And they've got a big naval base, I suppose you could hit that, but there's no central...
We did that during World War II.
Yeah, we sank the French fleet when it was on our side. So that's what the British do. So
probably because what happened in D-Day.
it's probably why the
French killed us.
Yeah, well they did.
Yeah, the machine
most of the people were fighting against the French, and it wasn't until a British chap came out and said, we're British. They said, oh, we thought you were French. And they surrendered to us. Because they thought we were Free French.
Yeah,
they didn't know we were British. Because the French army hated the Free French, but they were more than happy to surrender to the Americans and the British. They didn't want to surrender to the Free French because they saw them as a bunch of
lunatics.
Not traitors, really. Yeah. God, life's complicated, isn't it? I suppose all the Germans could really have done to have ended the war would be to shoot Hitler.
They liked Hitler.
Yeah, I know, but if you could have shot Hitler and said, I like Valkyrie.
Well, they wouldn't have stopped anything. Because that means the German army would have got really annoyed. Now, if you shot Hitler, and his second in command, who loved Hitler massively, who was it again? Goebbels, was it?
Goebbels. Well, Dornitz took over after Hitler died, but he was head of the Navy.
I mean, the guy who was really sucked up and he was with him.
That was most of them. Everyone around Hitler was a sycophant.
The one in the film Downfall, in the...
that was Goering.
Goering, yeah. He would have taken over.
Yeah, but there wasn't much point Germany doing anything at the end at that point of the war because Germany was already screwed. We're talking way earlier than that.
Yes, that's kind of fine.
Yeah, if Murmansk would have been taken in 1941-42 by the Finns, then Russia would have lost the war.
Yeah, I know.
There's no two ways about that. They would have had no, especially after they lost the oil fields.
The Russian army that took out Berlin was the Russians' very last army.
Yeah. Yeah, in the field, yeah. That was Russia. That was Stalin. Stalin was really a genius for that. Because he gambled everything on one push. The Russians were planning for another year of war. But Stalin just saw that gap in the German lines because most of the German army was fighting in the south.
And fought something.
And so they were in Hungary fighting. And they decided, and Stalin saw this little gap in the German lines and he just ordered Konev and Zhukov to just go for Berlin. And he said, just go for it. Just take Berlin. And they did it. And it was astonishingly good. I mean, they were a good move.
How about Rommel?
He officially committed suicide. Unofficially, he was murdered.
What happened?
He was probably murdered.
Why?
The general staff planned to overthrow Rommel because they didn't like him.
Was this before the end of the war?
Yes. Rommel kind of lost a lot of his good boy Cub Scout points because he lost the battle for Normandy and it allowed the Allies to land. Mainly because he wasn't there and the guy in charge of the German army was a traitor. He worked for the British Army. So it kind of helped the Germans. So it kind of helped the Allies.
Like the Americans' big landing ship, which was run by German spies.
That was World War One, yeah, the landing craft, yeah. So it's always useful when you're invading a country to have the guy in charge of the country on your side. Just saying. He sent all the telephonists home. He said, oh, there's nothing happening, I'll go home for the day. And then he cut his own telephone wires. And then when Rommel arrived, he was sort of, I don't know what happened, sir. I haven't got a clue what went wrong. No one giving any orders? What? I don't know. My phone doesn't appear to work. Yeah, seriously. It was a disaster for the Germans. So he'd lost a lot of his brownie points. So he was kind of in disgrace. And then he was linked to the plot to assassinate Hitler. The July bomb plot.
How dare he?
Yeah, and he wasn't actually linked to it, but he may have known. It is quite likely that people approached Rommel and suggested there'd be a coup, but Rommel just went, no, absolutely not.
I mean, the only thing I like about the SS is that they carried on fighting even when the war was lost.
Yeah, most of them weren't German, and they were going to die anyway.
Yeah, no, they weren't. The Russians took them in.
Which ones?
No, the ones with the generals in. And they had women and children with them.
Yeah, they took the officers. But most of the SS units were, you weren't allowed to be in the German army if you were foreign. You have to be German born to be in the German army. And so any foreign troops who volunteered for the German army had to be in the SS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's everything.
Right, so if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think of the continuation war Finnish rifle squad.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. It's goodbye from me and goodbye.